Welcome to Force for Good and our series on the future of capitalism. Today we have a fascinating conversation to have with Petteri Taalas, who is the Secretary-General of the World Meteorological Organization, the WMO. The WMO actually founded, with the United Nations, the IPCC, the leading climate change institution in the world, that is warning us of the consequences of not managing this transition in the world, and climate change that is now facing us as an existential risk. We're going to have a fascinating conversation because Petteri is an expert in this field. He has a long-standing career. He's from Finland originally and ran the equivalent of the WMO in Finland. He joined the UN's, the UN Secretary-General's Climate Committee too, and is closely involved in all the strategies and policies that are now taking place as we look at how we cope with this major challenge facing all of us. Thank you, Petteri, and I'm delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
Petteri, this is such an important discussion. I want to kick off by asking you to summarize first, what is the role of the WMO?
So we are the United Nations Specialized Agency on Weather, Climate and Water, and we are also the founding father of IPCC, which is providing scientific reports on the status of climate and climate science. And we are also dealing with the global observing systems, weather, climate, water and also greenhouse gases, and we are providing reports on status of climate, and we just published one here in COP28.
Would you summarize how you see the impact on humanity of these changes?
Once we established this IPCC, the first decision was made in 1979. We have been showing that climate change will affect human lives in various ways. It will affect the global economy, but it will affect human beings growingly. Luckily, we have been able to see a decline in the amount of human casualties thanks to improved weather services, but the economic losses have been increasing eightfold during the past 50 years. So that's affecting people, and we have more and more challenges with our water resources. We have started seeing more often drought events. We have started seeing more often heat waves and also flooding. About the whole world has seen an increase of heat waves. About half of the planet has seen an increase of flooding events, and about 1/3 of the planet has seen an increase of drought events. And sea level rise is a long-term threat for many island states, but also for many big cities around the world, and then these mountain glaciers are melting at the higher and higher speed, which means that we are getting less and less water to the main rivers in all continents, and we expect that by the end of this century most of the mountain glaciers will be totally gone.
That's a shocking set of things to say, which it strikes me people have not fully digested. Why do you think that is? Why do people not appreciate this level of tragedy that will hit the world?
I think that what we have seen happening during the past 10 years, first the governments have realized that this is a problem because they have started seeing with their own eyes the increase of disasters related to weather, and also what has been happening during the past years is that we have started seeing more technological means to limit the warming, and this wake up of the private sector and the engineering community has been also fairly encouraging from our perspective.
There seems to be a divide in terms of where the impact will hit. I took the time to go through the IPCC report, the long version, and if I were living in the north of the world, perhaps I could take the view that the direct impact of climate will be predominantly felt in the south, and I could find that, of course, I have some heat waves and there will be some tragedies, but not of the level of the global south. And living in the north, maybe one could be a little bit complacent about this and think it's a problem at the south. Do you feel that is true?
If you look at the economic impact, it's clear that low latitudes and southern hemisphere it's going to be hit hardest, but in the north, especially countries which are close to the Arctic area, we will see at least double the global warming, even triple, and that's going to have a big impact on biosphere and also many traditional ways of living in those parts of the world. And since we have this interconnection of the economies worldwide, there's not going to be any winners, because if a large fraction of the world will suffer economically, or even we will have more migration, then that's going to affect also the rest of the world. So there won't be any winners in this game.
Your report is an expert report drawn from experts all over the world. Would you explain the process of the IPCC report, how it comes together, how many people are involved, just in brief, so people understand the magnitude of the effort that is going in to collect this information?
Yeah. So this end result of this work has been that we have published typically 3 volumes of something like 1,000 pages each, and thereafter a summary for policymakers to summarize the findings. And this process is such that it's a scientific process. So we are first selecting the authors of those parts based on their scientific merits, and there's a competition who can be the lead author and who can be the contributing authors. And typically we have 1,000 world-leading scientists who are 1,000 who are compiling the reports, and then there's typically 2,500 scientists who are reviewing it first, and thereafter it's after the scientific review where we get typically 100,000 comments from the reviewers. The final report is compiled, and then it's sent to the governments, and also the governments have a chance to comment it, and if there are scientifically valid arguments, there may be some modifications to the reports, but usually the governments approve these scientific facts.
All this comes together and highlights all the consequences of our actions to us. If I take each major region of the world and ask you to comment a little bit on those. So if I'm in North America, what are the major impacts on North America? What one can expect? So
in North America, there has been already increase in the amount of heat waves, especially the western part of North America has been facing severe drought during recently, and also severe wildfires in California and in western Canada, and also this last summer, for example, we had record-breaking wildfires in eastern part of Canada. We have never seen such wildfires. And the fact that all mountain glaciers are melting, that there's going to be less and less water in the main rivers, which have their origin from Rocky Mountains, and that's already happening. These water shortages in western parts of North America, they are already part of the everyday life. And in Mexico, we have started seeing also increase of the tropical storms, and of course that's also hitting the Caribbean part of North America, and we have seen some hurricanes hitting even New York. For example, this Sandy was hitting New York, and we got major damage because of the flooding in southern Manhattan, and for example, some of the subway lines were closed for more than a year, and there was also major economic damage. And this negative trend will continue until 2060s anyhow, and that means that these conditions will be more extreme. And if you look at the agricultural conditions for both North America and South America, the scenarios are such that the soil moisture will decrease, which is going to cause challenges for the agricultural production.
Your report indicates that the food basket of America will actually dry up and will have to be moved to the North America and the northern lands into Canada too. Is that correct?
The growing season has been getting longer, and that's of course affecting countries like Canada, but then more southern parts of the North America are getting drier, and that's what we already see. So, but globally, one can say that the losses of agricultural capacity that because of climate change cannot be compensated with the increase at the higher latitudes, because the soil is not most fertile, and the solar radiation conditions won't change there.
And America has the largest capacity in terms of fertile land to feed the world, to feed itself and the world. This is a major industry. And at a time when we will go from 8 billion people to 10 billion people by 2050, this sounds like a crisis.
So worldwide, one of my personal main concerns is how to feed the growing global population in these changed climatic conditions, where potentially we will have difficulties in provision of food productions for this population. And we have major growth of population in Africa, which is already taking place, and we have seen also many parts of Asia, like Pakistan or Indonesia, where there has been fairly dramatic growth of population, and that's a difficult equation. Also in India, that's going to be a major challenge. The population has been growing, and at the same time, the conditions are getting more challenging.
Let's come to Europe. So, what should Europe worry about as these changes happen?
In Europe, of course, this southern part of Europe has become drier and hotter, and we have already seen, for example, 2 summers with record heat waves and drought, and that has also affected human health. For example, in 22 summer we got between 60 and 70,000 casualties in Europe because of heat waves, and gradually these Mediterranean regions are getting warmer and drier, which means that these desert areas that we have had so far in North Africa, they are moving northwards, and the conditions for agriculture and also conditions for tourism industry are getting more challenging.
And if we continue to move east and we go to China in particular and Asia, what are the challenges that they should be thinking about it?
So this melting of the Himalayan and also Central Asian glaciers is going to be one of the challenges. And for example, 65% of the freshwater resources in whole Central Asian region have their origins from the glaciers of Tajikistan, which are gradually melting and finally disappearing. The same is true for the Himalayan glaciers, where we expect to see melting, and many of the main rivers in both India, China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, they have their origins from Himalayas, and once this glacier is melting, we are getting less and less water to the key rivers, and that's going to lead to water shortages for human beings, for agriculture, and also for industries. And in Asia, of course, the sea level rise is also one of the challenges. Both in India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and China,
Yes.
important economic areas are in these low-lying areas, and the sea level rise is a threat, and also increase of tropical storms, which are going to hit those areas.
And particularly for China, I guess, the southern states of China have really driven their growth and been industrialized. And you're saying those will also be a threat.
Sure, and it's the same for Vietnam, and it's the same for Indonesia, for Thailand, and also southern parts of India.
And Petteri, if we take the global south, it seems from your report that they suffer the most in terms of the heat waves and in terms of the impact of drought and desertification and so on. And that would lead to a massive displacement of people too, right, across the global south.
That's true, and if you look at this from economic perspective, we have learned that in island states we have seen GDP losses of several hundreds of percents. The record may be Dominica 2017, when they lost 800% of their GDP after a hurricane hit. And in African countries we have seen GDP drops of the order of 10 to 20% after flooding or drought events, and in richest countries only a few percentage losses. So this, in relative terms, economies are hit hardest, and of course in Africa this population growth and their dependence on agriculture as a source of welfare and economy, that's a difficult equation. So we are expecting to see more challenges with agriculture and again how to feed the growing population and how to ensure employment for the young people, and also of course other services, healthcare and education. That's not an easy equation.
I think you're painting a very stark picture and very clearly. And I would like to briefly look at a constituency that we collect lots of information about, we analyse and we publish reports on, include the largest financial institutions in the world. We look at the top 125, of which 30 are actively involved with us in some way. And we look at the top 100 technology companies in the world too. Is it your sense that the people you engage with sometimes from these sorts of organizations, at the level of the climate officer, the sustainability officer, they understand these issues? And clearly that's communicated in their organization to the most senior levels. And they have an appreciation too. But it strikes me the actions we're taking might indicate that people don't really believe or understand what will happen to their financial assets if this transpires, that has not been fully processed into their plans and their planning scenarios. What do you think?
For example, if we read these reports of the World Economic Forum, also for this year, 23, they have clearly demonstrated that the biggest threat for the global economy are related to climate change. Number one risk is failure of climate mitigation. Number two is failure in climate adaptation. Number three is a growing amount of natural disasters caused by climate change. So these are not only matters of comfort, but they are also matters of economy. And it should be also clearly understood that, for example, these fossil business-related assets may lose their value because of this transition. And if we read the most recent report of International Energy Agency, for example, they have been surprised how quickly this energy conversion out of fossil fuels towards renewables, hydropower, nuclear is going to happen, and that means that these fossil assets are risky business even in the near future.
And if I look at the research that my team have done on this, reading your report, they point to serious food security issues in North America, Europe and Asia, as you highlighted too. Serious health and mental well-being challenges, infectious diseases, and so on. Write-downs in real estate, in infrastructure too, which are big investments today. And a resilience investment needed, almost as if we are about to experience multiple pandemic shocks. And that's what we should expect, almost a cycle of multiple shocks, equivalent to the pandemic we just went through, that would keep happening. And in the southern neighbours, they point to some extreme scenarios affecting animal and livestock, agriculture, fisheries, right down also in real estate infrastructure and food security. And in Africa in particular, water shortages and flooding and increases in systemic poverty and poverty levels generally. I mean, we're a tough species. We could adapt to almost anything, but why would we have to if we plan for it? And do you believe there are actions to take that we can actually make a difference to the 1.5C target or to make the planet safer?
Actually, we have started acting, and we are lucky that we have also technological means and even financial means to be successful in this game. In the 2014 IPCC report, there was an estimation that we will be heading towards 3 to 5 degrees warming, and at the moment we are heading towards 2.5 to 3 degrees range. So something has happened already, and we have already plenty of countries which have been able to decrease their emissions by applying new technologies, solar, wind, hydropower technologies, and also in car industry we have growing amount of electric vehicles on the market, and so we are moving in the right direction, and the future is not automatically going to be black, and we are more or less talking about different scales of grey, and the light grey future would be this 1.5, which is still theoretically alive if we really speed up our transition of energy systems and transport systems and certain industries. So and we have means for that. 10 years ago we didn't have such means, and they were not from financial perspective attractive. But what has been happening during the past 5 years, for example, especially, is that the prices of solar and the wind energy, they have been dropping under the prices of fossil fuel energy. And also more and more we are getting electric vehicles on the market, and also their prices and the prices of batteries are dropping. And we also understand what kind of food we should eat to reduce the methane emissions, to eat less rice and red meat. And also we know what is the component coming from deforestation. So we have the means and understanding what needs to happen, but so far we are not heading towards 1.5.
We're not doing
but
it.
it's
We have the answers, but we're not moving at the scale and speed. Is that the challenge?
so we are moving, and we are just in the process to speed up our transition. So that's good news. And if you read the most recent report of International Energy Agency, there's certain hope. But whether we will reach 1.5, that's going to be very challenging. 2 degrees is something that we could reach much more easily, and we should not lose the hope. And also, if you look at the amount of people who are attending these COP meetings, like here in Dubai, we are almost 100,000 people. This is showing that this kind of movement is growing, and there's growing amount of sectors and players in countries who are interested in being part of the solution. So there's some hope, I would say.
It's good to hear something positive in terms of the story we've explored so far. From a political perspective, there are scenarios that are outlined too. And I notice those scenarios don't often come to the fore in the discussions with the IPCC or the WMO or with policymakers, but you have these things you call the SSPs. And there are five core scenarios I know that are often used. At the two extremes, I see that one of them is that we go for green, and the other extreme, that we go for broke or go for growth and exploit fossil resources to the extreme. And there are 3 scenarios in between. And each of those are a middle path that doesn't actually deliver. Doesn't deliver 1.5, and most scenarios don't deliver 2 either. Where do you feel we are on this spectrum of scenarios?
So we are in the middle at the moment, and so we are not heading towards this worst case scenario anymore, and we should also understand that this transition is a great business opportunity. I'm always using this kind of analogy to the horse carriage producers in New York 100 years ago, when they realized that there's a new thing called automobile on the market, and they were concerned that what's going to happen to their business. And I'm quite convinced that this fossil business will suffer, and this kind of new technology business will boom. And that's what we should also understand, that this transition is not only a cost issue, but it's also an opportunity.
Which parts of the world do you think, which countries in the world are most pushing the opportunity and see it as a great opportunity, that this crisis is something to solve for, and they believe they will create a better society at the end of it?
So we have, I would say that we have 3 areas where we have seen things happening. Europe has been, of course, driver of these emission controls, and Europe has done the best job so far. But if you look at these technological innovations, for example, this US Tesla company has been a game changer when it comes to car manufacturers, and that's very profitable business. But China has become the leading producer of solar technology, also wind technology, and they're the biggest manufacturers of electric vehicles at the moment. So China will be one of the winners of this business, and Europe is also going to be benefiting from this transition. And the fossil energy that Europe has been buying from Russia or from the Arabic countries, we could use that resource more smartly in the future, and that kind of transition is underway. And also in the USA, these car manufacturers and also the energy sector has started investing in solar and wind technology. So things are happening, and also this energy saving means, for example, in city of New York, they have changed their lighting system so that they have installed energy saving means, and they gain the money back in 5 years or so. So there are positive things happening in many continents, and I was recently visiting a couple of African countries, both Kenya and Ethiopia, and in both countries more than 90% of the energy that they are producing is now renewable, and so there are also these kind of encouraging examples worldwide. So if you read the media, the stories are always a bit negative, and nobody reports about this positive evolution that is going on worldwide.
Petteri, one question on the second order impacts, and particularly migration. I pick migration because it's a political issue, and it seems to be an issue at the heart of the most advanced democracies in the world. Talk about that, please.
So we have, I would say, double challenge there. We have one challenge which is related to the fact that the climatic conditions are getting more challenging, especially at the low latitude areas and places like Africa. And then we have this population growth challenge, that it's difficult for the young people to get employment and education and so forth, and they are seeking for better life outside of their home countries. And this has already had an impact on the Western democracies. In the USA, this has been a theme of President Trump. In many European countries, there have been a transition from moderate parties towards extreme right parties who are against immigration. And so this is not only a matter of people moving to other countries, but it has had an impact on policies and in some countries even on their climate policies. So sometimes those parties are not so eager to promote climate mitigation, and we have seen that happening also in North American countries, Australia and European countries. So this is having an impact on democracy, and that's something that also to keep in mind.
So failure to address climate change will not lead to, as the UN says, 1 billion people migrating into Europe or into the US or into other parts of the North. But it just takes a few 100,000 to enter a country, and for that country to feel the threat, and for ordinary people to start to vote more and more right. And those, as they vote more and more towards the far right, it seems as if those parties do not have the policies to pursue climate change with the vigor that is required to actually make it for a more peaceful world and deliver human security for all. Is that correct?
That's right, and that has been happening to a certain degree. So, for example, this interest to build a fence against the Mexican border in USA and also in Europe, we have seen such transitions taking place.
And it seems as if fences do not keep out people as effectively as people thought in all parts of the world.
Yeah.
And somehow there has to be better solutions.
Exactly. And of course we have to tackle also this population growth challenge, which is also affecting climate change. We will see more victims of climate change, but we will see also more potential consumers. So also this population growth is an issue that we should talk about.
It's a profound challenge to our way of life, and demonstrates our interdependency and interdependence. As we come to a close, what are the biggest barriers that you see to making this change? Are they political? Are they to do with people really not wanting to change? Are they technological? What are they? Sort of barriers do you see that need to be overcome?
Of course, in this game we have winners and losers, and it's difficult for those players whose business is related to fossil energy and sources of fossil fuels to give up their their business. So that's clear, and this transition is not very easy for such countries and such companies. But at the same time, we see these winners, and of course, finally the winner is going to be the whole planet and whole mankind.
That's a really positive note. And as an individual, and I'm delighted we're here at COP having this discussion, as you say, there is a buzz of so many people trying to find answers. One of our partners, the World Academy of Art and Science, is working with the UN on an initiative called Human Security for All. Do you see us arriving at human security for all through the endeavours we're making? Are you positive about that?
Let's hope so.
I hope so too. And I'm delighted you spoke with us about this, and you've highlighted some of the challenges and issues that we all face. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.